They said the Alpha King touched only what he intended to break. So when his shadow fell over her, when the palace fell silent and her instincts screamed too late, she understood. She was not chosen to be loved. She was chosen to be owned. And in that moment, the bond awakened. Wild, forbidden, and unstoppable. The Omega line stood barefoot on cold stone, shoulders bowed, eyes trained on the floor as they had been taught since childhood. Silence was law here. Breath was permission. Hope was a liability. She stood third from the end. Too small. Too quiet. Too forgettable. That was how she had survived the royal pack for 6 years, by being unseen. Incense burned low in iron bowls, bitter with moonroot and ash, meant to dull scent and soften instinct. It never truly worked. Not on nights like this. Not when the Alpha King summoned the servants to the inner hall, a place Omegas were not meant to enter unless chosen for punishment or purpose. Tonight was purpose. Boots echoed once, then stopped. Every spine stiffened. The Alpha King had entered without announcement, as he always did. He did not need heralds. His presence arrived ahead of him. Pressure in the air, a tightening in the chest, the ancient command woven into Alpha blood. Even drugged, even trained into submission. Her wolf whimpered softly inside her ribs. Do not look up, she told herself. Looking invited notice. Notice invited ruin. She focused on the cracks in the marble floor, tracing them like constellations. She counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. Inadequate. The word cut clean and sharp. An Omega at the front flinched as a royal steward stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder and guiding her away. Dismissed. Safe for now. Infirm. Another was removed. Too old. The Alpha King spoke rarely, but when he did, the room obeyed. His voice was low, controlled, stripped of warmth. It was not cruel. Cruelty required effort. This was something colder. Assessment without attachment. She felt him move closer. The air changed. Her scent suppressant faltered. Panic fluttered under her ribs as her wolf stirred. Confused. Drawn forward despite years of conditioning. She pressed her tongue to the roof of her mouth, grounding herself in pain. Do not react. Do not breathe too deeply. Leather creaked. She knew, before he stopped in front of her, that she had failed. Alphas did not pause for servants like her. The silence stretched. She could feel him now. Not just his presence but his attention. Heavy. Focused. Like the moon dragging the tide whether it wished to move or not. He did not speak. He inhaled. It was not a sharp breath. Not curious. It was slow. Deliberate. The world tilted. Her knees weakened as something ancient and wrong sparked low in her body. Heat curling where there should have been nothing but obedience. Her wolf surged, confused and aching, slamming against the cage of her training. No, no, no. The Alpha King exhaled. The sound was barely audible, but it carried judgment. Step forward. Her body moved before her mind could catch up. One step. Then another. The line behind her seemed to recede, as though she were being pulled out of the world she knew and into something narrower, darker, inevitable. She kept her head bowed. Name, he said. Names were power. Omegas did not offer them freely. Lira, she whispered. The Alpha King circled her once, boots measured, gaze unseen but felt everywhere. Along her spine, her neck, the place where a mating mark would burn if fate were cruel enough to remember her. You've been suppressed too long, he said. Not to her. To the air. To the steward waiting nearby. Yes, your majesty. Remove her from general service. Her heart stuttered. This was not how selection worked. Chosen Omegas were assigned publicly, catalogued, paired to tasks or alphas. This was private, quiet, dangerous. For what purpose? The steward asked carefully. The Alpha King stopped in front of her again. Obedience, he said. The word landed like a chain. Hands closed around her arms, firm, professional, unkind in their efficiency, and guided her away before she could think to resist. The hall faded behind her, swallowed by torchlight and stone corridors that led deeper into the palace. She was taken to a bathing chamber carved from black marble. Her clothes were removed, her suppressants stripped away. Warm water poured over her skin, and with it came sensation she had been denied for years. Scent, awareness, hunger, fear. By the time she was dressed again in simple white, her hands would not stop shaking. They led her into a private chamber near the Alpha King's quarters. Not inside them. Never inside. Alone, she stood by the window, moonlight spilling silver across the floor. Her wolf paced restlessly, nose lifted, searching for a presence it should not crave. The door opened. She did not turn. "You will remain here," the Alpha King said behind her. "You will speak only when addressed. You will obey without question." "Yes, your majesty." "Was. You were not chosen for affection," he continued. "Or comfort." Her throat tightened. "I understand. You exist to serve a function." She nodded. Silence stretched again, heavier this time. "Look at me." Her body resisted. Her soul did not want to know his face. Slowly she turned. He was not what stories promised. No monstrous snarl. No wild eyes. He was controlled, dark hair bound at the nape of his neck, crown absent but authority absolute. His gaze was steel-edged restraint, fixed on her as though she were a weapon he had not yet decided how to use. Something in his eyes flickered. Recognition. Well, calculation. "You will sleep when instructed," he said. "Eat when permitted. You will not leave this wing." "Yes, your majesty." He stepped closer. Too close. Her scent surged fully now, unmasked, answering something in his blood that should not answer back. His jaw tightened. For the first time his control showed strain. "This is a mistake," he said quietly, not to her but to himself. Then he turned and left. The door closed with finality. Lira slid down the wall, pressing a trembling hand to her chest as her heart thundered against her ribs. Somewhere beyond stone and crown, the Alpha King stood motionless, fists clenched, staring at the invisible thread that had brushed his instincts and refused to let go. Neither of them yet understood the truth. The bond had already begun. Lira woke before dawn, breath tangled in sheets too soft to be real. For a long moment she did not move. The room was unfamiliar. Wide ceiling veined with dark stone, curtains heavy with royal sigils, the faint scent of cedar and smoke lingering in the air. Alpha scent. Not overwhelming but present like a warning etched into the walls. She lay still listening. No bells. No orders. No other omegas breathing nearby. Alone. That realization settled slowly, unease blooming beneath her ribs. Servants did not sleep alone in the royal wing. They slept stacked and watched and replaceable. Privacy was a luxury reserved for those with value, or those being hidden. She pushed herself upright, white sheets sliding down her arms. The clothes she had been given the night before were folded neatly on a low bench at the foot of the bed. Simple, clean, unmarked. Not servant issue. Her wolf stirred, restless, pacing the edges of her awareness. It kept turning its head toward the door, toward the corridor beyond, where the Alpha King existed even when absent. The pull was faint but undeniable, like a tide that had learned her name overnight. "This is not real," she told herself. "You are not chosen. You are assigned." She dressed quickly, fingers clumsy. When she reached for the door, it opened before she could touch it. A royal attendant stood outside, eyes averted. "Follow," the woman said. No name. No explanation. They walked in silence through corridors Lira had only ever scrubbed at night, when the court slept and servants were shadows. In daylight, the palace was different, alive with murmurs, with power shifting invisibly from room to room. They stopped outside a smaller chamber adjoining the Alpha King's council room. "Wait," the attendant said, and left her there. Lira stood with her hands folded, spine straight, eyes lowered. Minutes passed. Maybe longer. Time moved strangely this close to authority. The door opened. "Enter." The Alpha King's voice did not rise. It did not need to. She stepped inside. He stood near a long table strewn with maps and sigils, dark lines marking borders and conflicts. He wore no crown, only black. His sleeves rolled back to his forearms. Command radiated from him effortlessly, like gravity. "You slept," he said. Not a question. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Did you dream?" Her breath caught. "No. Lie." She had dreamed of heat and moonlight and a presence behind her that never touched, only watched. He studied her for a moment, gaze sharp. Then he turned back to the table. "You will remain here during council hours," he said. "You will bring nothing. Speak to no one unless addressed." "Yes, Your Majesty." "You will stand there." He pointed to a place near the wall, half-shadowed. "And you will listen. Listen. Not serve. Not clean. Listen." Her heart beat faster. Omegas were not permitted in council chambers. Knowledge was dangerous. Knowledge created leverage. "You are aware," he continued, "that your presence here violates protocol." "Yes. And that if this becomes known, consequences will follow." She swallowed. "Yes." He faced her again. "You will not mistake this for favor." She met his gaze for the first time without being commanded. "I would never," she said quietly. Something in his expression shifted. Not anger. Not approval. Interest. The counselors began to arrive soon after. Alphas and betas in dark cloaks, their voices filling the room with controlled tension. Lira kept her eyes down, but she felt them sense her, one by one. Omegas learned to read rooms the way others read books. Confusion. Curiosity. Disapproval. The Alpha King ignored it all. As discussions rose and fell, territories, alliances, unrest along the northern borders, Lira felt the pull again. Subtle. Persistent. Each time his voice cut through the chamber, something inside her responded, tightening low and warm. She shifted her weight, ashamed of the reaction. Across the room, his hand stilled on the table. Just for a second. His gaze flicked to her. Sharp. Warning. The pull snapped back like a leash. By the time council adjourned, her head ached from restraint. The others filed out, murmuring. One paused, eyes lingering on her. The Alpha King did not look up. "Leave," he said. The counselor obeyed instantly. Silence fell. "You felt it," he said. Her heart pounded. "Felt what, Your Majesty?" "The disruption." She hesitated, then nodded. "So did I," he said. The admission hung between them, dangerous and unguarded. He stepped closer, stopping just short of her space. She could smell him now. Smoke, iron, something older beneath it. "Alpha King. Wong. This does not happen again," he said. "I don't know how to stop it." "Neither do I," he did not say. Instead he straightened. "You will return to your chamber." "Yes, Your Majesty." As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "You are not to speak of this to anyone." "I won't." "Was. Good." She left before he could say anything else, before the pull could deepen, before the air could thicken into something neither of them could deny. Alone again, Lira pressed her back to the door, heart racing. This was not obedience anymore. This was awareness. And awareness, she knew, was the first step toward ruin. If this story is pulling at you, stay with it. Subscribe to Lily Moon's Romance Library for more forbidden bonds, dangerous alphas, and omegas who were never meant to be chosen. The morning after her first council experience, Lira returned to her chamber, moving like a shadow along the polished stone corridors. Every step reminded her she had been elevated above her rank, yet remained beneath his power, a delicate line she could not cross. The chamber door closed behind her with a final click, cutting her off from the world outside. She pressed her palms to the wall, breathing shallow, trying to settle the restlessness that had begun in the council hall. Her wolf was awake, pacing, whining low in her chest, alert to something she could not yet name. Then the Alpha King appeared. Not in the hallway. Not announced. She had been certain she was alone. You feel it, he said without preamble, voice low, not a question. Lira froze. Feel what, Your Majesty? He stepped closer, boots silent against the stone floor, presence heavy and insistent. The bond. She blinked, confusion flaring. I don't understand. He stopped just short of her, shadowing the moonlight. It has awakened. Between us. Against all reason. Against law. Against your will, or mine. Her chest tightened. She had trained herself to control instinct, to mute the responses of her wolf, yet now it stirred, recognizing him before her mind could. Heat pooled low, and the pulse at her throat throbbed, betraying her. I don't know what to do, she whispered, voice trembling. Do not think you can resist, he said, eyes dark, unreadable. You were not chosen to love. You were chosen to obey. And yet... His hand hovered near hers, not touching, and a pull passed through her that made her knees weak. And yet the bond chooses on its own. She sank to the floor instinctively, pressing her palms against the cold stone, as though it could anchor her. Then what does that mean for me? He said nothing, only studied her with a weight that seemed to press the air from the room. Every inhale brought her closer to an edge she could not see. Her wolf whimpered, straining against the invisible leash, sensing the truth she did not yet dare name. You will sleep in your chamber, he finally said, voice tight, controlled. But the bond will not be ignored. It never forgets. It will pull. It will claim. And one day... His words trailed, leaving the sentence unfinished, yet somehow heavier for it. She nodded, though she did not understand, and he turned, leaving her alone again. The moonlight hit her face, cold and silver, and she realized she had never truly been alone, nor would she ever be. Her wolf pressed against her ribs, restless and urgent, and Lira shivered. The bond had begun, and she knew, deep in the marrow of her bones, that once it fully awakened, nothing would ever be the same again. The Alpha King had claimed more than her obedience. He had stirred something primal, something neither could fully control. The next day, the Alpha King summoned Lira before dawn. The corridors were empty, the palace still heavy with sleep, yet every stone seemed alive with his presence. Her wolf quivered beneath her skin, alert to his nearness, the invisible thread of their bond tugging at her chest with every step. You are late, he said, voice flat but heavy with unspoken warning. I woke early, Your Majesty, Lira stammered, bowing. I was ready. His eyes narrowed, and for a moment, the cold edge of command sliced through the air between them. You do not understand the consequences of being here, he said. Every heartbeat of yours is under scrutiny, every instinct measured. Disobedience is not permitted. Not now, not ever. Yes, Your Majesty, she whispered, swallowing the fluttering panic in her chest. He studied her for a long moment, the faintest trace of something unspoken passing in his gaze. Then abruptly he stepped closer. She froze. The air around him thickened, the pull of the bond tightening like a leash, pressing her toward him and warning her to flee all at once. Look at me, he commanded. Her throat tightened. She wanted to obey, wanted to drop to her knees, wanted to vanish under the weight of his scrutiny, but her wolf protested, her body betraying her. Slowly, her eyes lifted, meeting his. He circled her like a predator, slow and deliberate, each step measured, each breath controlled. Do you understand, he said softly, that the bond between us does not bend to reason? I do, Your Majesty, she whispered, though every nerve screamed in protest. You are mine to command, Lira, he continued, voice low, almost a growl. Not for affection, not for pleasure. But if you falter, if you give in to what you cannot control, the consequences will fall upon you. And upon me. Her pulse quickened, heat rising, instincts screaming with a dangerous mix of fear and desire. She bowed her head, trying to anchor herself to the cold floor, to the reality of obedience. I understand, Your Majesty. I will not falter. A flicker of something unspoken crossed his expression, Acknowledgement perhaps or surprise, but he turned sharply, signaling the end of the encounter. "Then begin your day," he said. "And remember, the bond watches even when I am not here." Alone, Lira pressed her hands to her chest, heart hammering, wolf restless beneath her skin. The bond was real. Too real. It was not merely instinct or training. It was a force that neither of them fully controlled. And the knowledge terrified her. Because she understood now. Her obedience alone would never be enough. The Alpha King had stirred something primal within her, and she feared the day the pull could no longer be restrained. One wrong move, one faltering heartbeat, and the bond would claim more than her obedience. It would claim her very soul. Follow the dangerous awakening of Lira's bond. Subscribe to Lily Moon's Romance Library to witness every heated, forbidden moment with the Alpha King. The first sign was pain. Not sharp, not sudden. A slow, coiling ache low in Lira's abdomen that bloomed with every step she took through the palace. It was unfamiliar and intimate, a heat she had never been permitted to feel. Her body responding to something it had no language for. The bond was no longer quiet. She tried to work, simple tasks assigned by attendants who would not meet her eyes, but her hands trembled, her focus splintered. Every breath carried his scent now, faint but persistent, threaded through stone and fabric and air itself. "Wolfa, King. Mine," her wolf whispered before she could stop it. She pressed her palm to her mouth, horrified by the thought. Omegas were trained to suppress such impulses, to bury them beneath obedience and fear. But this was not impulse. This was recognition. By midday, the ache had sharpened into awareness. She felt him before she saw him. The pull snapped tight, yanking her attention toward the western corridor. Her breath hitched. Her wolf surged forward, tail high, ears alert, responding to a presence it had already accepted as inevitable. "No," she whispered, stopping short. Did not matter. The Alpha King turned the corner at the same moment. He froze. For a fraction of a second, so brief no one else would have noticed, control slipped. His jaw clenched. His shoulders went rigid. The air between them thickened, vibrating with something raw and unfinished. Servants scattered instinctively, sensing danger without understanding it. "Leave us," he said. They obeyed without question. Silence fell heavy and charged. Lira dropped to one knee automatically, head bowed, breath shallow. Her body shook with effort as the bond surged, demanding proximity, demanding acknowledgement. "Stand," he ordered. She did. Too fast. Too eager. His eyes darkened. "You feel it more strongly today," he said. "Yes," she admitted, the truth tearing itself free. "I don't know why. I do." He stepped closer, and the ache flared into something almost unbearable. Her skin hummed, nerves alive, every instinct screaming to close the distance between them. "You are entering a bond phase," he said tightly. "Early. Impossible, given the suppressants you were raised on." "What does that mean?" she asked, voice barely steady. "It means," he said, "that your body has chosen." Her knees weakened. "No," she whispered. "It can't. I didn't." "You do not get to choose," he cut in. "Neither do I." He was close enough now that she could see the strain in him, the way his fingers curled slightly, the way his breathing had deepened despite his rigid posture. The Alpha King was fighting himself, and losing. The bond surged again, hot and urgent, snapping like a live wire between them. He hissed softly through his teeth. "Step back," he said. She tried. Her feet would not move. That was when he realized the truth. The bond had crossed a threshold. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist, not roughly, but firmly enough to ground them both. The contact exploded through her, heat and relief and terror all at once. Her wolf howled in triumph. He went still. The world narrowed to the place where their skin touched. Slowly, as though afraid of what he might unleash, his thumb brushed over her pulse. It jumped violently beneath his touch. "Damn it," he murmured. She looked up at him, eyes wide, unguarded. "Your Majesty, please." The word was not a plea for mercy. It was instinct. His grip tightened, then loosened abruptly as he released her, stepping back as though burned. "This ends now," he said hoarsely. "You will be confined to your chamber. No council. No corridors. No exposure." Her heart sank. For how long? His gaze held hers, dark and conflicted. "Until I can decide whether this bond destroys you, or me." He turned away before she could answer, leaving her standing in the corridor, wrists still tingling, body aching with a bond that had finally been acknowledged. For the first time, Lira understood the depth of her danger. The Alpha King was no longer pretending this was control. He was deciding what to sacrifice. And she feared, deep in her bones, that it would not be the bond he chose to break. Confinement was quiet in a way that felt deliberate. No footsteps lingered outside Lyra's door. No attendants checked on her. Meals appeared without sound, left on a small table and collected untouched more often than not. The palace had not forgotten her. It had erased her. The room seemed smaller with each hour that passed. Moonlight slid across the floor at night, teasing her wolf awake, reminding it of what it had felt in the corridor. His hand, his scent, the way the bond had flared so brightly it had frightened even him. Her body paid the price for that silence. The ache returned in waves now, sharper, deeper, spreading heat through her veins until her skin felt too tight. Sleep came in fragments, broken by dreams she could not escape, dreams of iron crowns and hands that did not pull away. She pressed her face into the pillow, biting down on a cry as the bond throbbed painfully, unanswered. He was suffering too. She knew it. The bond whispered truths her mind tried to deny. His restraint, his fury, his control splintering one crack at a time. On the third night, the pain became unbearable. She slid to the floor, back against the bed, knees drawn to her chest as her wolf whimpered inside her. Suppressants would not help now. They were useless against something that had already taken root. The door opened. She did not look up. "Get up." His voice was rougher than she remembered. Her body responded instantly, pushing herself upright despite the trembling in her limbs. When she finally lifted her eyes, he stood just inside the doorway, cloak discarded, jaw tight, shadows etched beneath his eyes. "You're hurting," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, Your Majesty." The lie tasted bitter. He knew better. He crossed the room in 3 strides and stopped in front of her, close enough that her breath hitched, close enough that the bond surged in relief and pain all at once. "You were not meant to reach this stage," he said. "An Omega like you, suppressed, unclaimed, should not be able to." "But I did," she whispered. "Yes," he said grimly. "You did." His hand lifted, hovering near her cheek, stopping short as though an invisible line restrained him. The effort it took him to remain still was written in every tense line of his body. "If I touch you," he said, voice low, controlled to the edge of fracture, "it will accelerate. The bond will deepen beyond concealment." Her wolf leaned into the space between them, desperate, pleading. "If you don't," she said softly, "it will tear us apart anyway." The truth settled between them, heavy and inescapable. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, the Alpha King's gaze held no illusion. "Then listen carefully," he said. "I will not mark you. I will not claim you. Not yet." Hope flared and died too quickly. "But I will allow contact," he continued. "Only enough to stabilize the bond. Only under my control." Her heart raced. "And if someone finds out?" "They won't," he said. "If they do, I will bear the consequence." The words were quiet, final. He reached for her then, slow and deliberate, placing his hand over her heart. The instant he touched her, the pain broke, shattered into warmth, relief flooding her body so suddenly her knees nearly gave way. He gasped. His breath stuttered. The bond surged, not wild now but alive, aware of itself, coiling tighter, brighter. "Steady," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "Just breathe." She did. For the first time since the bond had awakened, the ache eased. Not gone, but manageable. Contained. His hand remained where it was, grounding them both. "This changes nothing," he said. But his voice no longer sounded certain, because both of them felt it. Silence was no longer an option. The bond had been acknowledged, and the cost of denying it again would be far greater than either of them was ready to pay. If this forbidden bond has you holding your breath, stay with the story. Subscribe to Lily Moon's Romance Library for more dangerous alphas, impossible choices, and omegas who were never meant to be claimed. Palace noticed. Not all at once. Not loudly. But power always sensed imbalance the way wolves sensed blood in water. It began with glances held a second too long, with counselors pausing when the Alpha King entered, nostrils flaring as they searched the air for something unnamed. Lira felt it first in the corridors. The attendants no longer ignored her. Their eyes followed her now. Curious, wary, measuring. Omegas were meant to be background noise, interchangeable and unseen. She was neither anymore. The bond had altered her scent. Not enough to scream claim. Not enough to condemn them outright. But enough to whisper. She moved carefully, shoulders bowed, silence perfected, yet her wolf walked differently now. Head higher, steps more assured, responding to a presence that no longer felt distant. He had not touched her again since that night. That was the cruelest part. The relief he had given her had faded into a constant low ache, manageable but persistent, like a promise deliberately left unfulfilled. The bond pulsed quietly, patient, waiting. And so did he. They stood across the council chamber again 3 days later, separated by power and space and everything that should have kept them apart. Lira remained in the shadows where he had placed her, listening, watching. The Alpha King looked unchanged to the untrained eye. Composed, commanding, untouchable. But she saw the truth in the tension of his jaw, the way his gaze tracked movement too sharply, the way his hand tightened whenever another alpha spoke too long. He was holding the crown together by will alone. A counselor cleared his throat. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "there have been irregularities." The room stilled. "What kind?" the Alpha King asked. "Scent fluctuations," the counselor replied. "Among the servants. And—" A pause. A glance. "Within the royal wing." Lyra's heart stuttered. The Alpha King did not look at her. "Clarify," he said calmly. "There are rumors," another counselor added, emboldened, "of an Omega spending unusual time near council chambers. Of privileges not earned." Silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. The Alpha King's power rolled outward. Not violent but absolute. The room bowed under it instinctively. "Rumors," he said softly, "are the language of the undisciplined." No one spoke. He rose slowly from his seat. "I will remind you," he continued, "that I alone decide what serves this crown. Omegas included." The emphasis was deliberate. Dangerous. Lira felt the bond flare in warning, her wolf bristling. He was drawing attention. Protecting her by force, not secrecy. Mistake. The counselors lowered their gazes, but the damage was done. Suspicion did not vanish. Learned patience. After the session ended, the chamber emptied quickly. Too quickly. Lira did not move until commanded. "You," he said without turning. "Stay." Her pulse thundered as the doors closed behind the last counselor. "You are becoming a liability," he said quietly. She flinched. "I never meant to." "I know," he cut in. He turned then, and the conflict in his eyes was no longer hidden. "That does not change reality." She took a breath. "Then let me go." The words surprised them both. "Strip the bond if you must," she continued softly. "Send me away. I will disappear." His expression hardened. "That would kill you." "Maybe," she said. "But it would save you." The bond recoiled at the idea, pain spiking briefly, as though rejecting the thought outright. You think I would trade your life for silence? He asked. You are the Alpha King, she said. You trade lives every day. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, stopping just short of touching her. The restraint in him was visible now, raw and fraying. And you think, he said lowly, that this bond has not already cost me? Her breath caught. For the first time, he continued, I hesitate, second guess, I feel. The confession landed heavily. That is weakness, she whispered. Yes, he agreed. And it is yours. The words were not cruel. They were truth. Outside the chamber, footsteps approached. Voices. The Alpha King stepped back instantly, mask snapping into place. You will return to your chamber, he said coolly. We will speak no more of this. Yes, your majesty. She bowed and left, heart pounding. Behind her, the Alpha King stood alone in the council chamber, staring at the invisible cracks spreading through his crown. The bond had not only claimed an Omega, it had begun to unmake a king. Moonlight poured across Lira's chamber, silver and sharp, catching the edges of the simple white bedspread like frozen fire. She lay awake, body restless, wolf pacing beneath her skin. Every heartbeat was a drum she could not silence, echoing the memory of his hand, the heat of the bond, the way it had tightened between them in the council chamber. She tried to tell herself it was discipline, that she could endure, that she could remain invisible again. But the bond had other plans. A knock shattered the fragile quiet. Enter, she whispered, though her pulse spiked in anticipation. The door opened, slow, deliberate. He stepped inside without ceremony, cloak brushing the floor, presence filling the room before his boots even touched the stone. The Alpha King, controlled, unreadable, devastatingly dangerous, paused at the threshold. You should be sleeping, she said, voice tight, trembling despite herself. I could not, he replied simply. His gaze swept the room, lingering on her, sharp and heavy. Nor could I leave you in ignorance of what the bond demands. Her wolf howled in warning. Desire surged, mingled with fear. She pressed her palms into the bedspread, grounding herself, but the ache persisted, persistent and unrelenting. He stepped closer. The air seemed to thrum with tension, as though the room itself recognized the forbidden nature of their proximity. Do you understand what this means? He asked, voice low, measured but threaded with heat. That every second you remain near me, the bond strengthens. Yes, she whispered, shivering. But I can endure. He paused, gaze dropping briefly to her lips. She felt it then, the faint pull, a magnetic force she could not resist, drawing her toward him, warning her, claiming her. Endure. His voice hardened. You cannot endure what you do not control. She tried to turn away, but his shadow followed, looming, impossible to escape. The bond surged violently, heat coiling through her veins, wolf straining, insistent. He reached out, hand hovering near her shoulder. Not touching but enough to make her body quiver. Do you feel it? He whispered. The spark between us. It was never meant to exist. It is treason. And yet, it is alive. Yes, she breathed, almost losing herself. I feel it. The distance between them contracted, not by physical movement but by the pull of the bond itself. She wanted to retreat, wanted to obey, wanted to escape the ache. But every instinct, every nerve screamed toward him. He inhaled sharply, hand still suspended, controlled yet trembling. If anyone knew, if the pack knew, this would be considered a crime against law, against lineage, against everything. I know, she whispered, voice barely audible. But I cannot stop feeling it. His jaw clenched. Neither can I. The air thickened, tension humming, as the Alpha King stepped back, finally breaking the invisible tether, though the bond pulsed insistently, demanding more. You will remain in your chamber tonight, he said. No more interaction. No contact. The bond must be contained. Yes, your majesty, she replied, body trembling, wolf whimpering beneath her skin. He turned to leave, but his hand paused on the doorframe. "Understand this, Omega," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "The moment you resist the pull, the bond will claim us both, whether we desire it or not." The door closed behind him, leaving her alone with her racing pulse and the quiet, insistent thrum of the bond. Alone but not free. The Alpha King's shadow lingered in her mind, stretching across the room, and she realized with a shiver that her obedience was no longer sufficient. The bond had awakened desire, and it would not be denied. The council had called an emergency session. Word of the scent fluctuations in the royal wing had spread farther than the Alpha King had hoped. Lira knew the whispers had begun, subtle but deadly, rumors like arrows finding their mark. One misstep, one misjudged glance, and the bond could be exposed. She stood in her chamber, waiting, hands folded, heart hammering with every tick of the clock. The wolf in her chest paced relentlessly, sensing the shift in power beyond the walls, the tension that could not be avoided. A knock came, deliberate and firm. She didn't need to be told. He had come. He entered swiftly, cloak discarded, eyes storm-dark. No greeting, no hesitation. Only the authority that had defined him for years, and yet now, vulnerability flickered behind the steel of his gaze. "Lira," he said, voice low, dangerous. "The council suspects. The pack will know if this continues." "Yes," she whispered, bowing. I will do as you command." "You misunderstand," he said, stepping closer. The bond pulsed between them, heat and tension wrapping tightly around them like a coil. "I must choose." Her breath caught. "Choose what, Your Majesty?" "To protect the crown, I can exile you. I can erase you from this pack. You will survive, perhaps, but our bond, it will be broken." His hand hovered near hers, and the ache flared, relentless and demanding. She shook her head. "No, cannot be erased. The bond. You cannot understand." His jaw tightened. "I will lose everything if it is discovered. My authority, my power, the loyalty of the pack. One wrong move and I fall. And yet..." His gaze burned into hers, impossible to resist. "I cannot send you away. Not now. Not ever." Her wolf surged forward, frantic and aware. Her pulse thudded against the floor of her chest. She wanted to flee, wanted to obey, wanted to vanish into shadows, but desire, primal and feral, held her in place. He stepped even closer, the heat from his body a physical weight pressing into her. The bond flared, coiling tight, demanding, claiming. His thumb brushed her wrist lightly, grounding her, igniting a fire that no suppression could douse. "You are mine," he said softly, voice tight with restraint and longing. "Not by law, not by duty, not by choice, but by blood, by bond. You do not understand how dangerous you are to me, Lira. And I cannot, will not, ignore it." Tears pricked her eyes. She had spent her life obeying, hiding, surviving. She had never been chosen for anything. Never. And now, she was chosen by the most powerful alpha, in a bond forbidden by pack law, bound in ways neither of them could escape. "What do we do?" she asked, voice trembling. He paused, eyes dark and heavy with the weight of decision. "We endure," he said finally. "We control what we can. And when the time comes, we decide whether the bond will destroy us or save us." Her wolf whimpered softly, pressing into the ache in her chest. She knew instinctively that this was not a warning. It was a promise. One choice had been made. The other had yet to be spoken. And in the silence, the Alpha King realized the truth. The bond had already claimed them both. The Alpha King faces impossible choices, and the forbidden bond tightens. Follow Lira and him through desire, danger, and inevitable consequences. Subscribe to Lily Moon's Romance Library to see what happens next. The throne room was quiet, but the air hummed with anticipation. Courtiers, advisors, and counselors had gathered under the guise of a routine audience, yet every pair of eyes flicked toward the Alpha King, sensing the tension, the invisible pull that neither crown nor law could suppress. Lira waited at the edge of the hall, posture rigid, heart hammering. Her wolf quivered, sensing the culmination of everything that had been building since the first spark of the bond. Every step she had taken, every instinct suppressed, had led to this moment. He entered then, the Alpha King, clad in black, presence filling the hall like a storm. No cloak, no crown. Authority radiated from him in waves, tempered by restraint, tempered by desire, and by something she could finally name: recognition. He stopped in front of her, eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that stole her breath. The hall fell silent, courtiers frozen in curiosity, suspicion, and awe. "Lira," he began, voice steady but low, vibrating with power, "the laws of our pact do not permit what exists between us. The bond is forbidden. The consequences are death, exile, ruin." Her wolf growled softly, pressing against her chest, warning her that he would not turn back. "And yet," he continued, "I cannot undo what has been awakened. I cannot unbind what my instincts, my blood, my very soul have already claimed." A murmur ran through the hall. She sensed the counselor's unease, the thin veil of secrecy finally lifting, yet he ignored them. "You will understand, all of you," he said, voice carrying like iron, "that the bond has chosen. It is not law. It is not opinion. It is fact. She is mine." Gasps rippled through the assembly. Some faces hardened in outrage, others in shock. Lira felt her knees weaken, the bond thrumming between them, pulsating in her veins. He stepped closer, hand outstretched. When it met hers, the spark was immediate and explosive. Heat coiled through her, her wolf howled in recognition, and all pretense of distance shattered. "She is mine to protect, to command, and to honor," he said, voice rising with authority that brooked no opposition. "Any who would challenge this, will challenge me." The hall was silent. Every courtier, every alpha, every beta understood the weight of his declaration. It was not merely a bond. It was a claim, irrevocable, unyielding, forbidden and unstoppable. Lyra's chest ached as the heat of the bond spread, searing and tender all at once. Her mind spun, the realization dawning fully. She was no longer merely a servant. She had been chosen. She had been claimed. And the Alpha King had not only declared it to her. He had declared it to the world. He stepped closer still, face near hers, breath warm, eyes dark and molten. "Understand this, Lira," he whispered. "I have never chosen. I have never bent for anyone. But you are different. The bond does not lie. The crown does not matter. The law does not matter. You are mine." Tears pricked her eyes as the weight of his words settled. Fear, desire, and relief collided, overwhelming every instinct she had trained herself to obey. I am yours," she whispered, voice shaking, wolf whining in agreement. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, the first she had seen. "And I am yours," he replied. "In all ways that matter. In all ways that will follow." The bond surged between them, hot, uncontainable, irrevocable. Outside the hall, the world could protest, could enforce laws, could whisper rumors. Inside, the Alpha King and his Omega had chosen each other, bound not by permission but by primal, unstoppable desire. The throne room, once a place of rigid order and whispered politics, became a witness to the impossible. The Alpha King had claimed his Omega. Not just her obedience. Not just her body. Her heart, her soul, her bond. Every part of her that was forbidden to be claimed, was his. And the world would never be the same. The forbidden bond has reached its climax. Witness the Alpha King's ultimate claim, the Omega's surrender, and the bond that defies law and desire. Subscribe to Lily Moon's Romance Library for more heart-pounding werewolf romance and dark alpha bonds. The 10-chapter standalone.